Secret of the Mimic is finally out, and it is amazing. Steel Wool absolutely cooked with this new game. This is a theory video, but I just want to give the game some genuine praise for a second. This is either my third or fourth favorite Five Nights at Freddy's game, with the top two being the VR ones, and the only reason I can't decide if Secret of the Mimic is third or fourth place is because it's competing with Ultimate Custom Night. Anyway, FNAF was kind of in a weird spot for a while when it came to its horror. Security Breach, the FNAF movie, and Help Wanted 2 are all great products, in my opinion. However, something that they very obviously lack is horror. The recent main FNAF releases haven't been very scary, which is something the fandom hasn't been responding the best to, because FNAF being a horror-focused series is what got us all invested in the first place. However, when looking at the books that came out around these releases, they were very dark. Tales from the Pizzaplex has stories where a guy has his body twisted in a tight tube attraction and he nearly gets ripped apart. The epilogues to these books have the Mimic running around ripping off arms and limbs of scared teenagers. A little girl rearranges her face to turn herself into a doll. A teen boy literally has robots inside of him that carve tattoos into his body until he is unrecognizable. The Mimic literally scoops out people's brains like it's ice cream. These books are very gory and dark. Maybe sprinkle some of that in the games and movies. Well, it looks like Scott has heard the criticism, and now he's swaying the games back to having a darker tone. Last year, we got Into the Pit, which was very horror-focused. At the end of this year, we are getting the second movie, which, judging by our current teaser, does have the animatronics murdering a lot more this time. And of course, we have this new game, Secret of the Mimic. The game has a lot of tense moments, a lot of darker areas, and even with the scares, this game has a really good story attached to it. A story about a man who lost everything, who in all of his grief attempted to get everything back. He tried to convince himself he got everything and everyone back. Secret of the Mimic is the story of how Edwin Murray fell deeper and deeper into madness until he truly did have nothing. Now like, comment, and subscribe. The basic plot of this game is that you are a Fazbear Entertainment employee named Arnold. You are sent to Murray's costume Manor to retrieve technology left in there because Edwin Murray has supposedly gone missing. You get into the costume Manor with a data diver tool, which then makes you have to explore the costume Manor to fully upgrade your data diver with all permissions in order to get the schematics for something called M2. While doing that, the Mimic, also known as M1, is chasing you around the Manor, dressing up in costumes of many characters and trying to kill you. You manage to avoid the Mimic and fully upgrade your data diver and get the M2 schematics, and you are told you can go home. Just to find out, no one from Fazbear Entertainment ever sent you to the costume Manor in the first place. It was the Mimic the entire time. The Mimic wants the schematics for M2. The rabbit hole on why that is goes a long way. The first weird thing I noticed about the game is that Murray's costume Manor is pretty different from his factory in Tales from the Pizzaplex. And Fiona also seems to be alive to take care of David for multiple years, when the books already told us Fiona bled out and died when giving birth to David. Sure, in the past, both Fazbear Frights and Tales from the Pizzaplex have had weird timeline inconsistencies, but it has usually been small stuff, such as Afton having 2 arms in the Man in Room 1280, even though Pizzeria Simulator shows Afton only having 1 arm, or that Susie has brown hair in Coming Home when the games depict her with blonde hair. There's also the fact that Edwin's age does not make any sense, with him being 24 sometime in the 1970s and then being 64 in the 2030s, which the math there obviously does not math. But those can easily be explained by the fact that the book authors don't play any of the games, so they wouldn't have that kind of information, which is why minor details can sometimes be inconsistent with the books and games. However, the Fiona stuff in this game is not a minor detail. like Susie's hair color changing. This goes pretty much against everything the Mimic story in the books told us. Or does it? It seems like a major change at first, that in the books Fiona dies when giving birth, while in the games, it seems that she actually survived giving birth and died because of a fire that took place at Fall Fest.
I have to go help the Fall Fest crew, just for a few days until the installation is finished.
Oh, why did you go? You weren't even supposed to be there. You were supposed to be here with me and David. Oh, how am I supposed to tell David that his mother is gone?
However, the big twist of Secret of the Mimic is that when Edwin made the Mimic, he actually tried to turn it into Fiona. That the Mimic is meant to replace Fiona after her death, and because of that, all of the Fiona stuff in this game is now put into question. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the events of the Mimic from Tales actually still do happen in the games, and then after that story, Edwin eventually comes back to his factory and reprograms the Mimic to become Fiona. Not only is robot people already an established thing in the series, but also we already learn in this new game that this is something Edwin quite literally does. I also want to point out similarities between Edwin and Henry. In the Mimic, when Edwin is destroying his creation, the way it is written is very, very similar to the way Henry creating the fourth Charlie bot is written. Quote where Henry builds the Charlie bot. His despair turned to rage. He seethed as he soldered her skeleton together, pouring his anger into the forge where he shaped her very bones. Now here's a quote from when Edwin destroys the Mimic. Edwin had been lost in a void of despair, and now his despair had turned to rage. He could almost feel his murderous thoughts pouring through his muscles and transfusing through the metal into Mimic systems. I feel like it's intentionally written to sound similar. So under this idea, Edwin would have attempted to bring back Fiona. However, a lot more things need to happen before Secret of the Mimic. Something we learn in this game is that Edwin's father also appears to be working for Fazbear Entertainment, owning Murray's costume Manor. The new Fiona seems to be working there as well. Edwin, however, still seems to be distancing himself from Fazbear Entertainment. Text logs in the game show that William Afton had been trying to contact Edwin for a while to come back to the company. Software development and the entire Murray Costume Manor catalog. We would love to keep you on as a lead engineer. Although we now technically own the land, we would never touch the house your parents built. We feel this offer has been more than fair, considering how far behind you are. It's just too much for you to handle alone. We are waiting for your response. William Afton. This would make sense that Afton is desperate for Edwin to come back to Fazbear Entertainment, because as we saw in The Mimic, multiple teams from Fazbear Entertainment have attempted to retrieve Edwin's technology, and all of them were killed by the Mimic. The only way to get that sort of tech back would be to get Edwin back. Edwin eventually accepts and starts working at his dad's place, owned by Fazbear Entertainment, Murray's Costume Manor. We know from an audio log that he meets the recreated Fiona there.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
What for? I don't even know you. I'm brand new here. Let's start again. I'm Fiona, and you are?
Edwin Murray.
Edwin and Fiona hit it off, and everything is perfect. It seems from what we hear in these tapes, Edwin is genuinely convinced that he has Fiona back, that she somehow came back. With this illusion he created for himself, Edwin marries Fiona, and then he starts testing his luck a bit by wanting to bring David back as well, creating M2, which he uses to replace David. Obviously, if Fiona is just the Mimic, she can't give birth, but Edwin still needed her to at least have memories of giving birth to David, so he recreates those and puts them in the Fiona bot, which is implied by a note in the game in the moon section. Fiona and David in this game are connected to Sun and Moon. The Moon.exe game has you get to David's room while being guided by the Sun, who has the same face as the Fiona machine, trying to recreate her. The note says, "Memory error, detail report. We were expecting. There were complications. Consciousness was lost for an undetermined time. Once I woke, we were all together and happy. A family. But something was different. I felt wrong somehow. Was I me? I would never sleep again. Corrupted file suspected. Please advise." So Fiona was given the memories of when the real one died in childbirth. Now, we have both a Robo-Fiona and a Robo-David. Edwin seems to be really convinced that his family is back. And even though this is the case, he still falls victim to his own work, as we see in the tapes. Eventually, we learn Edwin's father dies, and he takes over Murray's costume Manor. Eventually, another tragedy hits. Fiona went to Fall Fest to help out with the installation, where she ended up burning in the Fall Fest fire we've been hearing about for a while. Edwin has now lost Fiona for a second time. He is unable to retrieve the Mimic from that fire, meaning to the whole public, Fiona would be dead. This actually aligns well with Tales, where the next time we see the Mimic, this is what is described. Quote, "The skull was the only part of the endoskeleton that was shiny. The rest was dark and discolored, as if it had survived some kind of fire." Something that never gets explained in Tales itself. But if the Fiona that was in the Fall Fest fire was just the Mimic, then that would explain why the Mimic is burned in the Tales epilogues. After that, Edwin is now desperate to find a way to continue working and take care of David without Fiona, so he thinks back to when he had his actual son. The last time David would love playing with the Mimic, so Edwin tries that, but this time he has wearing costumes in mind for what the Mimic does. He wants the Mimic to play with David in costumes this time around. However, something goes wrong. He introduces David to the new Mimic, and it's not like how the real David reacted.
David, I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1.
Why does it look like that?
Look like what?
It's scary.
The real David loved the Mimic instantly. The current one doesn't. He's scared of it. This is probably when it really sinks in for Edwin that he didn't get his family back after all. So Edwin tries something else. We see in these tapes that he turns the Mimic into Fiona. It doesn't work as well as the first time. Fiona's program is stored in the Mexis machine, probably in case of another accident. This Fiona, however, sounds more robotic. This time, she is aware of the fact that she is just a robot, and she wants to be a hidden creation.
Edwin, you need to listen. I know you were excited, but you can't let them know about me. It's not safe. They wouldn't understand. Keep it between us for now.
It doesn't work as well as it did the first time creating Fiona, which is likely when it sinks in for Edwin that the David he is taking care of obviously isn't David either, so he loses his temper and David is gone.
Stop! You're not him. You're not! Stop sounding like him!
But it seems Fiona wants Edwin to repair David.
Edwin, you can't put it off any longer. You need to try again. Build another.
For the last time, no! It wouldn't be him! Oh, who am I kidding? You're not really you! It's so stupid.
Edwin, calm down and give it some thought. Try again. Make another, and we can all be together.
But the magic is lost. Edwin can't even recreate David if he wanted to.
Someone told them about M2. Well, they can't have it. Every copy has failed. I don't even know why it worked the first time. But it did.
Here's why I think recreating David and Fiona worked the first time for Edwin, but not the second. For Fiona, I have already pointed out that Edwin destroying the Mimic is worded very similar to Henry building the fourth Charlie. The way Henry was even able to bring Charlie to life was because in his sadness, he had poured a piece of himself into Charlotte's old Ella doll. It was part of his soul being in that Ella doll that ever gave life to Charlie in the first place. I believe the same applies to Fiona, since Edwin poured his agony into the Mimic. That is how he was able to turn it into Fiona. As for David, in the Mimic, Edwin cries into the Tiger plush, quote, "Now he could remember squeezing Tiger, crying so hard that his tears soaked Tiger's fur," end quote. Now here's a quote from the fourth closet. "He cried over that cheap store-bought rag doll for 2 months. He cried into it, he bled into it, he poured his grief over it," end quote. If the first version of M2, David was given the Tiger plush, freshly cried into, then that would be how that David managed to come to life in the way Edwin wanted, because part of Edwin's soul bled into the Tiger plush. However, future attempts fail because Edwin is not aware of why M2 ever worked the first time. Future M1 attempts basically failed, so now Edwin is falling more into madness and anger. After too long of not repairing M2 eventually decides to lash back out at Edwin. Edwin seems to almost die from this situation.
I can't move. I can't feel my legs. I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you. Please, call for help. M2, respond.
However, we never actually hear him die, and since Fiona says in the game's ending she is still trying to contact Edwin,
My communications with Edwin have been severed. Edwin abandoned them. He shut himself away in our home. Head to the main house and activate the communications sub-terminal. I have a message for him. We must convince him to repair M2. That is all that I want.
it seems clear he did manage to survive this, but now Edwin has shut himself away. He is not responding to any of Fiona's attempts to contact him. He finally realizes how mad he had gone, and that the real Fiona and David had died a long time ago. Now, the Fiona he built is just desperate. She wants M2 repaired because she wants to take care of David again.
I miss you, but I miss my child. I watched him grow up through this machine. I want him back.
That seems to be the Mimic's ultimate goal, getting David back. However, it doesn't end there. This game has given us a lot to talk about, so I have a lot of future Secret of the Mimic theories planned. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week.